So, Stuart, in a lot of churches today, we are needing to get video from lots of places and to lots of places. What are some of the more popular ways for distributing video right now?
I mean, it kind of depends on your situation, but we'll just start with the most basic way. I think that the Blackmagic ATEM line is your ATEM. I don't know exactly what it stands for.
I never looked it up.
But anyway, I think they make a pretty easy product. They originally made it for YouTubers. So like
basic
one-man show podcasts kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then churches just jumped on board. This came out, like 2019, I think, right before the pandemic is when they launched it. Yeah, the first one. And it was awesome. You got a few buttons. You could plug some stuff in. You could route some stuff out. And it was super easy to use. And then from there, they made some bigger ones. And it's really, really easy.
Yeah, the original ATEM minis, because the ATEM is a product Blackmagic's been making for decades.
Yeah.
They're big broadcast switchers. But the ATEM mini was such a big deal because it was a very affordable, very small.
With buttons on it.
And you could live stream from it. Yeah, It had everything you needed. The first models had HDMI, and anybody who's tried to do distribution with HDMI knows that those cable links are not going to get you very far.
No.
So the ATEM Mini worked out really good for if we had a couple cameras really close to the switcher.
Again, small YouTube podcast is what it was designed for.
And in churches, we're usually running into these bigger issues. Now we need to bring cameras in from all over the room, and we need to broadcast to projectors and TVs that are maybe in the lobby. And HDMI is just not really good for that. So the technology that was kind of ruling for a long time to distribute video was HD-Base-T.
Yeah.
And what did we see good and bad about that?
Well, HD-Base-T is basically, to sum it up, it's you take an HDMI cable on this end, you take an HDMI cable on this end, and you need to convert it to Ethernet. That's basically what it is. And there's a couple different ways to do that. One standard is HD-Base-T. Now, HD-Base-T will go up to 100 meters.
Depending on the equipment.
But it maxes out 100 meters. And when you read that, you have to understand that's like if you laid one out in a parking lot.
No interference.
Zero interference.
Issues.
You know what I'm saying? And so it gets shorter from there.
Yeah.
And it works pretty well. So in our world, well, we're installing a lot of cabling and we're running, up to 300 feet with all this stuff. Our two options are SDI or HD-Base-T and Ethernet.
Yeah.
And basically, the way I look at it is I like SDI better because it locks in, and it's one core with a big fat shielding around it.
A lot more shielding.
And so, in my opinion, I think that it rejects things a little bit better when you're running them distances, because if any of you guys have ever been in a ceiling, okay,
it's a mess up.
Then you know that there's lights up there, there's power, conduit, there's all kinds of stuff. All of these things are bad for long distance video transmissions. And so it's my opinion that SDI does a little bit better. I don't know if I can verify that, but I've just installed a lot. And
SDI is an industry standard. It's a coaxial cable. So if y'all remember from decades ago when we used to get cable TV through actual cables, those are coaxial cables as well, slightly different.
It's similar. It's similar to that. It looks similar if you were to cut it open.
But it's still digital. So it's still digital video. It's still limited to 300 feet because it's digital. But like he said, SDI is a more robust cable, and it's a locking connector, and it's industry standard. And Blackmagic has gotten on board with that.
Yeah.
So all of their ATEMs now can actually come proprietary with SDI, which I love. When we're bringing a lot of cameras in on the back, instead of having all these HDMI cables, which can easily get pulled out or bent, SDI cables all come in, they plug in tight. And that used to be reserved just for their really high-end switchers, but now they make ATEM Minis and ATEM Mini Extremes with SDI.
And it's less converters. So imagine if you had a Canon C200, that has SDI outputs on it.
Yeah, you can run straight.
You're just talking about a cable, and it's cheap. It's way cheaper than HD-based TV because those boxes get so expensive.
And if you still need to convert to HDMI, like if you're sending to a Confidence monitor or a TV or whatever, Blackmagic makes these little mini converters, and they work really well.
And they're not expensive.
They're SDI to HDMI, HDMI to SDI, all that stuff. The last thing I'm going to say about SDI is a lot of churches are getting lured into this high resolution bandwagon. It really is a bandwagon. So HDMI's followed this too, but SDI is easier to follow. So 3G SDI is very standard right now. It's 1080p 60 frames, which is a very high definition signal still. 1080p is still a good signal.
It is. Very much so.
They've upgraded the standards, of course, to 4K, which I believe is 6G SDI, and then 8K, which is 12G SDI. And I had a church ask me one time, they're like, do we need 12G SDI converters? I'm like, no. Why?
For what?
Do you have an 8K camera? Do you have an 8K projector? So just always be cautious in the video world. Just because a bigger standard exists doesn't mean you need it. Yes. And that's important for almost all kinds of tech stuff. But especially in the video world, 3G SDI is going to do you just fine. It's going to get all your stuff in and out, and it's really affordable.